A winter that could force Kyiv to evacuate, the most apocalyptic forecast for Ukraine. Hello everyone, my name is Anastasia Husarieva, and while you subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share this broadcast with your friends, I'll tell you what to expect from this winter and what to prepare for. Even the president of Ukraine has already confirmed that this winter will be difficult. So let's get started. 3 days of cold and Kyiv will be deserted. Ukrainians have never heard a warning like this before. An energy expert warns that if the enemy destroys even one of the capital's thermal power plants, the city will face evacuation. There is gas, but there might not be heat. Without the thermal power plants, radiators will burst, pipes will freeze, and buildings will become uninhabitable. This isn't a disaster movie, but a completely real scenario that people are preparing for right now. Will Ukraine be able to get through this winter without mass outages and blackouts? And when might the moment come when the authorities actually say we have to leave Kyiv? Let's figure out why this is a real possibility. Ukraine has enough gas to get through the 2025 to 2026 heating season. There are no resource problems, but even having gas does not guarantee that Kyiv residents will have heat in their homes. Because the main threat this winter is not a lack of fuel, but the condition of the heating infrastructure, which determines the supply of heat. Kyiv is mainly supplied by two large combined heat and power plants, CHP5 and CHP6. CHP5 was commissioned in 1971 and CHP6 in 1981. The equipment has been operating for over 40 years, and about 80% of the capital's heating networks are completely worn out. This means that any serious damage or shutdown of the plants during a cold snap will immediately affect residential buildings, schools, hospitals, and businesses. How does the capital's heating and energy system work? Kyiv's energy system is a complex network where electricity and heat are interconnected. A large part of the power plants are state-owned and include nuclear, hydroelectric, thermal power plants, and combined heat and power plants, CHPPs. The central operator is Ukrenergo, which coordinates the production and delivery of electricity by distribution companies throughout the country. Until 2022, the total capacity of all thermal power plants and combined heat and power plants was about 34 gigawatts, of which 27.7 gigawatts was accounted for by thermal power plants and only 6.5 gigawatts by combined heat and power plants. The main electricity was produced by nuclear power plants and thermal power plants, while combined heat and power plants simultaneously generate electricity and heat, making them key for heating large cities. The share of combined heat and power plants in the overall energy balance is about 10%, but they operate steadily and consistently, ensuring uninterrupted heat supply to hospitals and schools and residential buildings. In Kyiv, the main facilities are CHP5 and CHP6, which provide 48% of the city's heat supply and nearly 60% of its electricity. Their equipment has been in operation for over 40 years without major modernization, and a large part of the networks is worn out. Previously, the complex belonged to the private company Kyivenergo, which invested almost nothing in repairs. Since 2018, the CHPs and networks have been transferred to the municipal enterprise Kyivteplenergo under the management of the city. In order to make Kyiv's heating system more reliable and resilient to shelling and frost, the authorities are attracting international financial and technological support. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development is investing in the modernization of the energy sector, helping to upgrade CHP equipment, install new boilers, and improve the efficiency of heating networks. The IFC, International Finance Corporation, is funding the renewal of CHPs and the modernization of local cogeneration units, which allows for rapid heat supply in case of emergencies or peak loads. USAID, the United States Agency for International Development. Thank you. It supports the implementation of new technologies, the creation of backup heat supply schemes, and the training of personnel for rapid response to emergencies. And the SCADA system allows for centralized control of the CHP plants and heating networks, monitoring temperature, pressure, and consumption in real time, and automatically switching systems to backup schemes to avoid mass outages and breakdowns. Thanks to these investments and technologies we're talking about, the capital gains the ability to respond to critical situations much faster and, even in the event of damage to main stations, to provide heat to residential buildings, schools, and hospitals. In addition to large CHP plants, local cogeneration units or mini-CHPs are also being developed. These can quickly respond to changes in load and operate on various types of fuel, providing local heat and electricity. This reduces dependence on large stations and increases the flexibility of the system. In large cities, several CHP plants operate to ensure reliable heat supply to different districts. It is precisely the condition of these systems that determines whether Kyiv residents will be able to survive the cold in their homes. Let's talk about that very disastrous scenario. Just imagine Kyiv in the midst of a cold snap below -10 degrees. The CHP plant shuts down due to shelling or a technical malfunction. The water in the pipes instantly freezes, radiators burst, and restoring the system becomes practically impossible without large-scale repairs. In the first hours, residents feel the cold in their apartments, and schools and hospitals are also left without heat. Businesses shut down, and within 3 days, the city can turn into a real ghost town. An energy experiment? Alexander Karchenko warns that if the CHP plant fails and the temperature stays below -10 degrees for 3 days, the authorities must be prepared to evacuate people from the capital. Every minute is critically important because any delay in restoring heat supply threatens the destruction of residential buildings and poses real risks to people's lives, as the expert points out. That is, this winter threatens not with a gas shortage, but with a potential man-made disaster that could be caused by the loss of heating networks whose resilience determines whether Kyiv residents will have warmth in their homes. Even having gas reserves won't help if the heat and power plants or boiler houses are damaged by shelling. In such conditions, the authorities must immediately drain the water from the radiators to prevent the pipes from bursting, and shut down backup or mobile boiler houses. A lack of prompt response means that restoring heat will become impossible even after a week. This scenario can be called a man-made disaster, as the consequences will be immediate and large-scale. Residential buildings, hospitals, schools, and industrial facilities will be left without heat, and repair work could take months. This is not science fiction. This is a real threat that energy workers and city authorities are preparing for, testing their emergency response plans. Preparation and a plan B. To avoid disaster, the authorities and energy specialists are developing a detailed plan B. It includes connecting backup boiler houses, gas piston, and cogeneration units, as well as the ability to quickly switch systems to alternative heat supply schemes. In every district and at the level of individual buildings, there must be designated points for the rapid connection of mobile boiler houses to ensure uninterrupted heat supply to residential buildings, schools, and hospitals, as well as modernization of CHP plants and heating networks. This allows for increased production capacity, reduced fuel consumption, and greater system flexibility, especially during the off-heating season. Backup installations and mobile boiler houses can provide stable heating even in the event of partial destruction of the main stations. Energy specialists emphasize that preparation now is not just a precaution, but a real necessity. After all, the lives of thousands of people depend on how quickly actions are taken. Plan B also includes coordination of actions between energy specialists, city authorities, and emergency services. In every district, rapid response algorithms must be developed, backup installation connection points identified, and evacuation procedures established in case heat supply cannot be restored. This helps to avoid large-scale damage to heating networks and ensures stable temperatures in homes, hospitals, and schools, even on the most difficult days. However, even the best plan will only work if there is swift coordination and clear action. And it is precisely this that will determine whether Kyiv can survive the cold without evacuation or whether part of the city will have to be abandoned to save people from the cold and danger. In recent years of the war, Ukrainian cities have already experienced what it means when the heating supply is under threat. In February 2025, Mykolaiv was hit by Shahed drones, resulting in the complete destruction of the power generation at one of the local thermal power plants. As a result, tens of thousands of subscribers were left without heat. The city's mayor, Oleksandr Sienkiewicz, reported that utility services and thermal power plant workers, together with Mykolaiv Oblteplenergo, did everything possible to restore heat supply using alternative solutions. Thanks to cooperation with Denmark, the city received modular boiler houses, which made it possible to maintain heat in hospitals and critically important facilities, even when the main equipment in the city was destroyed. Problems also arose in other districts, particularly where the strike hit directly on the sewage collector, and repair work lasted the entire day. At that time, about 46,000 residents were left without heat, and later the president noted that more than 100,000 people were affected by the Shahed drone attacks, which demonstrates the aggressors' unwillingness to restore peace. Not only Mykolaiv suffered in April 2024, Kharkiv also felt the consequences of the attacks. In the morning, as a result of the shelling, the CHP plant that supplies the city was damaged, and the transformer substation was completely destroyed. The city's mayor is Ihor Kryvyi. Terekov reported that despite the destruction, the city continues to function. The metro, trolleybuses, and part of the tram routes have been launched. However, without a modern air defense system, the restored facilities are constantly under threat of new attacks. Other regions and the president's office actively help the city, providing generators and fuel to stabilize the situation. At that time, more than 200,000 subscribers were left without electricity. Thank you. And the city barely managed to maintain a balance between restoring services and the constant threat of shelling. A similar situation occurred in the Kyiv region. On the night of April 11, 2024, the Trypillia thermal power plant in the city of Ukrainka suffered a direct hit, as a result of which its generation was completely halted. It was the largest thermal power plant in the region, supplying electricity to Kyiv, as well as the Cherkasy and Zhytomyr regions. The plant's workers were suspended due to the accident, and restoration required significant resources and time. The facility covers more than 280 hectares, and without it, a large part of the region was left at risk. Thus, the incidents that occurred in Mykolaiv, Kharkiv, and at the Trypillia thermal power plant demonstrate the real consequences of strikes on thermal facilities. There is an immediate risk of mass outages of heat and electricity, which are critically lost. Hospitals, schools, and residential buildings suffer. And to restore services, it is necessary to deploy mobile boiler houses, backup generators, and international aid. These cases clearly show that even with sufficient reserves of gas or electricity, restoring heat supply after an attack can take days or weeks and put people's lives at risk. This winter will be a test not so much for gas reserves as for the resilience of Ukraine's heating infrastructure. Thank you. Kyiv and the major cities have resource reserves. There are modernized CHP plants, backup boiler houses, but the main risk is shelling and the destruction of networks. If large combined heat and power plants or boiler houses go out of service during severe frosts, radiators will burst, pipes will freeze, and restoring heat will become impossible. In such a case, even the capital would have to be partially evacuated. And whether Kyiv residents will be able to survive the cold in their homes depends on how quickly backup systems, mobile boiler houses, and local authorities respond. This apocalyptic scenario is not a fantasy, but a real threat that energy workers are preparing for. Every district, every building must have a plan B, because even a few days of frost without heat could turn the city into a wasteland. The fate of Kyiv this winter depends on how resilient the infrastructure proves to be and how quickly Ukrainians and the authorities respond to an emergency situation. Whether the city will manage to survive the cold without evacuation or whether it will become a ghost town will be revealed in the coming month. This winter will test not only the heating system, but also people's readiness for the most extreme conditions. So, we're not trying to scare you, we're urging you to be resilient, to prepare, not to lose faith, and to help not only our armed forces of Ukraine, but also the energy workers. Be sure to subscribe, leave a like, write a comment, and share your life hacks on how you're preparing for this winter. And we will definitely keep you updated on what's happening in our country and beyond, so you can understand the real situation. So we'll see you in the next broadcasts. My name is Anastasia Husarieva. Please take care of yourselves and wash your hands with soap. Bye-bye, everyone.